My name is Catherine Michaelis, and I am interviewing Caroline Evans and Jack Evans for Georgia State University's Women's March Oral History Project. Today's date is March 15th, 2017, and the interview is taking place in special collections at the Georgia State University Library. We're going to start out just a little bit by talking just kind of about you and both of you and your background. So what year were you born and where?
I was born in 1975, and I was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Do you want to tell about when you were born, or you want me to tell? Me? Okay. Jack was born in 2010, and he was born in Seattle, Washington.
Okay. Do you have any other children other than Jack?
I do. We have a daughter also, and she was born in 2015 here in Atlanta.
Okay. What do you do for a living?
I'm a community planning consultant, and I own my own small business. And we do contracting mostly with municipalities, lots of times as a sub-consultant to larger architecture and engineering firms. And so I do land use and public outreach and computer mapping, GIS.
Cool.
So, yeah, and Jack is in the first grade at the museum school. That's his full-time job.
Cool. So where did you grow up mostly?
Mostly I grew up in Central Florida in a small community called Crystal River. My parents still live there, and it's about an hour north of Tampa on the Gulf Coast of Florida.
Okay. So is your family very politically inclined at all, one way or the other?
I think that, well, my parents are definitely pretty liberal Democrats. I don't think that, I always grew up knowing that they were Democrats and kind of hearing about why and that kind of thing. I don't think that there was a lot of, I don't think that they were very political as far as like actually taking action, like when I was growing up.
Okay. And do you identify with any particular political party now?
I'm a registered Democrat. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So have you done much as far as political activism or protesting or any stuff like that?
No, not really. When I was in college, I was pretty active in the PIRG group, the Public Interest Research Group. I went to Florida State, and so it was FPIRG there. And I wouldn't say that it was politically active, but it was more like socially active, like social activism. So one of the campaigns that I worked on a lot was ending hunger and homelessness in the Tallahassee community, and like different ways to work on doing that. And they also were pretty, that organization is pretty tuned in environmentally, I would say, which has always been pretty important to me. And so I think just through that, I would say that was probably my most active time in my life as far as political activism.
Okay. So as far as the Women's March on January 21st, so you guys went to the Atlanta March, right?
We were here in Atlanta, yeah.
And why did you choose to attend the march in Atlanta in particular?
Well, it was, so I first heard about it because of the DC March, and of course was like, I want to go to that, and would have loved to go, but having two children and being a full-time working mom doesn't lend itself to just picking up and going to that kind of thing. So it just seemed like an easier fit into our lives and schedule to stay local and go to the Atlanta March. And I think that there wasn't, I don't know, like the first time I heard about it, I was like, well, I would just be doing that. Like there wasn't a question about going or not. It's just like, well, I'm going to turn out for that. And that's something I want to participate in. And so I felt really lucky that there was such a large march held here in Atlanta to participate in.
So why did you decide to bring Jack with you? Or Jack, was it your idea to go to the march with your mom, or was it your mom's idea? Your idea?
Well, kind of. We talked about it, and one of the women that I was going with has a son that he's friends with, and so we just decided to bring both of them, and I think part of it was to just kind of have him there being part of history and show him, like when something's important to you, like you turn up for it. And then Sarah, the other mom, and I talked a lot about like what do you say to your kid about this? Like how do you describe what you're doing and why you're there? And at their school, they have like this really large anti-bullying campaign, and so we kind of equated it to that. Like when when a particular group is not getting the equality that they need, it's kind of like being bullied. So I think that was a good way to talk about it to them, and something that as a 6-year-old you could really understand.
Yeah. I remember you guys were the ones with the no bullying signs, right, that you marched with.
Yeah, and so both of the boys made a sign, and we turned up at the MARTA station and met each other at our designated time, and they each had a no bullying sign, which was really cute.
Independently decided to do that. Cool.
Yeah. So what did yours say? Was it no with the kind of X mark through the O, no bullying? Mm-hmm. Do you remember what Jack's was? Oh, no bully zone. That's right. Yours was a no bully zone. Yeah.
So it was you and Jack and another mom and her son.
Mm-hmm. And then, we met a couple other of my friends. Well, one of my friends who lives in Decatur, and then her neighbor. And then please be still, a group of about, I think 5 other women who drove down from East Cobb that I'm friends with.
Okay.
So we all kind of met up, but it was really interesting because, living in Decatur, it's a small community, and you get to know a lot of people that your own age, and I feel like I saw everybody that I knew from Decatur that day. We just kept running into people, and a lot of moms and families from like his school and his preschool, and so that was like, it was a fun part of the day to see all those people, and and then on social media after, kind of see all their pictures and be like, we were right by you, and like, I can't believe we missed you. So
that's cool.
That was cool.
So most of your friends and family, were they all pretty supportive of your going to the march?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I heard stories from other people, from some of my friends whose husbands were like, I don't know if you should go, and mostly not because they didn't want them to be protesting or something like that, but just for safety reasons. Like they were just nervous about how it would be, and not knowing if it would really be peaceful and that kind of thing, which was understandable. And so a couple of my friends actually ended up not going because of that. But no, my husband was really supportive, and I think my mom and dad both were like pretty excited about it, and kind of living vicariously. I think all the feedback that I saw was very positive.
Did nobody had any concerns about you taking your kid?
No, I think I had some concerns once we got there. I was like, just stay right by me, I was just trying to make sure, because it was a really big crowd, which was amazing to see and be part of, but it also was kind of scary to make sure that like I kept up with him the whole time, and there's certainly, like, I loved all of the signs, but there were some things that like maybe we had to have a conversation that I wasn't quite prepared to have about what they meant and that kind of thing. But no, for the most part, I didn't get any feedback like that, other than what I kind of felt like once we got there. Sit up, hun. Like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to keep up with him? And and it was raining when we first got there, and so I was a little concerned about just like, will we be warm enough and dry enough? But he's a boy. He was fine. He was like, this is great, stomping in the mud. Yeah, so.
So, well, that's interesting you mentioned that about having topics brought up that maybe you weren't prepared to discuss. I mean, did you have any of those conversations while you were there or later?
Just kind of on a like high level. You know, I think we talked a lot about like why, because I feel like people turned out for a million different reasons. You know, everyone who was there kind of like had their own sign and their own probably reason for being there, and so, you know, we kind of talked about like why are these different things important to different people, and certainly some of what do the signs mean, what do the chants mean, and that kind of thing. That was certainly some of that was happening, but nothing we couldn't like, nothing I wasn't comfortable with, nothing we couldn't walk back from. So, yeah.
So yeah, I think you're definitely right. People turned out for a lot of different things. A lot of different kind of causes are represented. What was the most important thing to you that made you turn up?
Kind of want to be there. I mean, that's a great question. You know, I think that like it was a big, you know, the whole election was kind of this big slap on the face to me, and like I think I've heard a lot of people since then describe it as being like woken up, and I never felt the need to really turn up to something like that and, you know, kind of be a part of making change in such a strong way before. And so to me, it was just a way to say like, hey, we're really here. And whether that's for, you know, women's rights and equal pay or reproductive rights or just like our children's future, you know, environmentally and that kind of thing. I mean, all of those are important to me. And I felt like the message of being able to go and just lend a little bit of a voice to that was important to do.
Okay.
Can you sit up, please? Stop making weird noises. All of this is on the video now, you know. Okay.
So,
stop, please.
So, what were there any signs that you saw or chants that you heard that you particularly liked that really stood out to you?
I think I sent you one of my favorite signs, which was a picture of kind of the outline of the woman that you see on a restroom sign, and they had colored what is, you know, supposed to be her dress kind of into a cape, so that it looked like, you know, a cape was flying behind her instead of it like she had on pants and a cape, and so it said like it was never a dress. I thought that was super clever.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Did you see any signs that you really liked?
No. Okay. So what did you think about the atmosphere?
Except for my own.
Except for your own.
Yeah,
Did
you had a
love
good
yours?
sign.
It was a good one. Yours and Jack's were pretty good. We did have a lot of people ask us if they could take a picture of the two boys together with their signs, which, you know, we said absolutely about it. So.
Do you still have your sign, Jack? Do you still have it at home?
I don't think we do. I think it got pretty ruined in the rain. Yeah, we had to get rid of it. We have lots of good pictures though, don't we? Yeah.
Cool. So what did you think about the atmosphere at the march in general?
I mean, to me it was really peaceful and welcoming, and you know, I never felt threatened at all for his safety or mine, and I had told him, like, if anything makes you feel uncomfortable, like, we'll bug right out, and, you know, and I kind of made that promise to my husband also, like, if anything seems to be going weird, like, I will get him right out of there, but I never felt any of that. I just felt like kind of this peaceful, welcoming, like, good atmosphere. We were not able to see the stage at all. We were kind of on the side of, like, kind of over by where the World of Coke is, like the plaza. And please stop making weird noises. I'm going to make you go sit over there and be off the camera if you can't behave. I know you don't want that. But anyway, so when the speeches and everything were over and everyone was getting ready to march, we kind of walked around and had a really good view of the intersection where Baton Bob was doing his thing and kind of kicking off the march. And that was really cool. And I felt just like this surge of energy, like everyone was like ready to go and like really excited about being there. And yeah, I think our whole group was kind of infected with it, like, yay, we're here and it's happening, you know. Nice. So that was cool.
Yeah. Were there any like emotional moments for you during the?
I mean, the whole thing, like it's gonna make me cry right now just thinking about it. Like the whole thing was like, it was incredible, you know, and just people were so just there to kind of be together, which I thought was really neat. Like I said, I saw tons of like just people I know from the Decatur community, and so that was really cool. And every time I saw them, I was like, so good to see, you know, like it was just one of those things to know that, you know, it feels really good to know that we live in kind of a community where there are a lot of like-minded people, and that the things that are important to me are, you know, important to them, and
sure.
that even if it's not exactly the same thing, like we can also kind of support each other. So, yeah. Please stop. Seriously. Just relax, okay? Thanks.
So since the march, have you talked to any neighbors or community? Have you done any like community involvement or anything or activities like that?
Yeah. So, 3 of the women that I mentioned that I went with, including Sarah, the other Jack's mom. The 4 of us kind of had formed this little group of like, you know, we have to do something like after the election. Like, what do we do? And we had participated in like the National Women's Organization. They did a big phone call. I think in late November, early December, maybe. And it was all about like, how do you get involved and how do you get started? And one of the things that they mentioned was the Women's March. And so that was kind of another catalyst for us to go and be there. And then after that, we basically decided that one of the things that we were lacking was just knowledge of what was going on. And so we kind of split up all of these things to research and assign them to each other. And then we had a meeting in January, because it was after the march, so maybe like a couple weeks later, so maybe early February, to kind of talk about like the information that we had found. And what we were looking to do is kind of identify like our senators, both at the national and state level, and that kind of thing. And then we also went and, Jack, please, you're so distracting. Can you just sit up and relax? We also went to an evening that the Friends School holds. As you know, we live like real close to the Friends School, and every year they do this. They open the community to the community and have speakers come in to speak about a different topic, and it's called the Beloved Community Series. And so this year was about women's rights and kind of women's equality, and it was really interesting because it was so timely. Of course, you know, felt so like new and real, and such a timely topic. And one of the speakers was Elena Parent, who's, as you know, like a local state senator. And anyway, so one of the things that she said was, if you, like, one of the best ways that you can get involved is to figure out who is running for office, and if you like them, support their campaign and help get them elected. And if you don't, and you know they don't stand for what you want to have represented and what you stand for, then figure out someone who does and help get them elected instead. You know, kind of get behind your candidates and really like make it happen. And so one of the, I think, the most interesting things that's going on with that locally right now is in the 6th district, and Tom Price's seat is open. And so like I said, a lot of my friends had come down from East Cobb, so they're all in the 6th district. So we've been having a lot of conversations about like how can we help influence, flipping that seat to a Democratic candidate. And John Ossoff is running, and so we have yard signs and are out, volunteering to walk in the different neighborhoods and talk to people about coming out to vote. And I can't go, but one of her neighbors is hosting a get to know him meeting on next Monday night. And so a lot of my friends from that group are participating in that. And so I think that this is just like this election cycle, and then the Women's March has just really raised the level of awareness for myself, absolutely, and a lot of my friends, and that a lot of us feel like, it's just more important, and we're trying to be more educated and do something to affect change if we can. So I have never called so many senators and congressmen, whatever. I've never done that before in my life, and now I'm on like a daily text message where, if you call the text message, then it tells you like who you're supposed to call that day, and it'll connect you to the right person, the representative for your district for either local or national, and that kind of thing. And you don't have to call, obviously, it's a text message, so you opt in if you want to call that day or not. And but a lot of times it's really easy because they tell you like, here's the issue, here's what we think you should say about it, but you can absolutely make your own script, and they connect you right to it. So anyway, I've never ever called this many people in my life, but like, I don't know, I just feel inspired and like, excited to act in that manner.
Cool. So, so what issues have you been calling people about? What have been those big ones for you?
I think that there's so many. One that sticks out is the Dakota Access Pipeline, and calling to say like, please shut it down, and please let's not. Although I think that's kind of unfortunately a losing cause. Like, you never know. We'll just see.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So how do you feel now about things in general? Are you obviously, you were fired up before the march because you were sort of alarmed about the way things were going. How do you feel now? Are you afraid? Are you hopeful? Or
I think that there are certainly a million things happening in Washington that I think are crazy and that I don't agree with personally, and that made me worried for our future, and that I have no words for, basically. But putting that aside, I think that there are so many people that, like myself included, absolutely, that are kind of like awoken to the fact that we had it really good for the past 8 years, and then before that, and that you can't just sit around and let that ride and just expect things to always be fine, and that part of democracy is participation. And so like I feel hopeful that there are so many people that have I think started participating, and I'm still scared, and I'm still like worried. I think that I'm still worried about the way things are headed, but I feel pretty empowered to actually be part of making a change. So,
yeah, that's interesting. I feel like a lot of people are kind of either feeling really empowered or feeling very helpless. Seems like everyone I've talked to has been kind of one or the other.
Yeah, and to be honest, like, I certainly waffle between one or the other, because there are days where you make the call and then the exact opposite happens anyway, and you just think like, that didn't even make a difference. But I feel like you have to just keep telling yourself like, yeah, it did, and it will in the long run. And and I think too, like, just learning how to work with people to affect change is really important. And I don't think that, I mean, that's, you know, that's not something that everybody's taught in school, right? So it's the kind of thing that as more and more people get there, and as more people get excited about making change and different causes, then maybe it'll, I don't know, that part makes me hopeful. I think that's the part that makes me hopeful. Okay. Keep your shoes on, please.
Do you think that being a mom makes you feel differently than you would otherwise about the way things are headed?
That's a really hard question to answer, because I don't know. I mean, I feel as if, like, on one hand, I feel like I've always had a social conscience, and if you had said, like, how do you feel about these issues, even when I was 16, I could have told you, like, oh, you know, this, and this. Like, I could have rattled right off to you. But it never felt so urgent until now, and definitely part of that is what world is this crazy wiggle worm and his sister going to grow up in? And what, you know, what's that going to look like, and how can I influence that? So would I have felt that way if I wasn't a mom? I mean, I think so, but I don't know if it would have felt as urgent.
Okay. No. Well, I think that's about it. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you'd like to talk about, or anything else you want to add about?
Well, Jack, I want you to tell a couple things that you saw at the march that you thought were really cool. Can you do that, please?
Me, and me.
Yeah, well, I know that you thought you were really cool. But do you remember when we were standing there and what was flying overhead?
Oh, yeah, but I'm not telling that.
Well, we were pretty impressed by the helicopters and knowing that, like, the news coverage was happening on the crowd and that kind of thing, and that's always a pretty neat thing to see for him. And I think that, you know, kind of the perspective that he'll have, I mean, it's obviously not that big of a deal to him right now, but looking back and knowing that he was a part of that, I think hopefully will be something that's pretty cool and important to him.
Yeah.
So, what else, Jack? Anything else that you really liked that day?
Was it fun for you? Did you have fun at the march?
No.
You didn't?
Are you sure? Because it seemed like you were having a really good time.
Yes, it was boring.
Oh,
It
my
was
goodness.
boring.
I don't think it was. He really enjoyed the chanting, and like I said, like looking at all the signs, and we have a newly minted, like, really good reader, so reading all of the signs and that kind of thing. I think this is end of the school day craziness that you're seeing, not a lack of being interested in what
fair
happened.
enough.
So anyway, that was all.
Okay. Cool. Well,
Okay, sit up, please.
all right. Well, thanks again.
Absolutely.
And, I'm going to turn every check.
Sit up, please. Say thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Put your shoes back on, please, you crazy kid.